While Númenor would be the greatest island realm of Middle-earth and have a far-reaching impact, there is another famous isle, an isle that not only hosted the immortal elves, but was used for transportation by the Valar. Its impact would also be far and wide, from influencing the early Númenorians to hosting great heroes like Frodo Baggins. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the island of Tol Eressëa. This island was originally located in the middle of the sea, between the lands of Valinor and the lands of Middle-earth. It is said to be a remnant of the destruction of the Two Lamps, a lone isle in the vast sea. But this unassuming island would become vitally important after the awakening of the Elves. For as the Valar would invite the Elves to live in Valinor, there arose the question of how to get so many across the sea safely. To this point in history, the only beings making this trip had been Valar and Maiar. These higher beings, when unbound to a mortal form like the later wizards, would likely have no need of something that had not yet been mentioned: ships. The Silmarillion tells us, "Therefore Ulmo uprooted an island, which long had stood alone amid the sea, far from either shore, since the tumults of the fall of Iluin, and with the aid of his servants he moved it, as it were a mighty ship, and anchored it in the bay of Balar, into which Sirion poured his water. Then the Vanyar and the Noldor embarked upon that isle, and were drawn over the sea, and came at last to the long shores beneath the mountains of Aman, and they entered Valinor and were welcomed to its bliss." Due to the island being anchored in the Bay of Balar off the coast of Beleriand, part of it breaks off when Ulmo moves to take the elves to Valinor. This results in the small Isle of Balar being left behind, and it was said that Osse, one of the Maiar in the service of Ulmo, would often visit this smaller isle. While the Vanyar and Noldor elves would take this passage, their kin, and third of the three clans of their kind, would be left behind. Having missed the earlier summons of Ulmo, the Teleri had been split. Some remained in East Beleriand, searching for Thingol, who had gone missing. Others moved to the coast to the west, taking Olwe, Thingol's brother, as their king, and living near the mouths of Sirion. In the coming years, the Maiar Osse and Uinen would come to the elves and teach them sea lore and sea music, leading to the Teleri being not only the greatest singers of the elves, but eventually the greatest seafarers. Back in Valinor, Finwë, Lord of the Noldor, would ask Ulmo to make a return trip with his floating isle, for he was great friends with the Teleri and wished them to join the elves of Valinor. Thus Ulmo would bring the island back to the shores of Beleriand, and while some would remain in Middle-earth with Círdan, others would make the great journey west. They ride aboard the island across the sea, with Osse following them on their voyage. But as the island comes to the Bay of Eldamar, the elves hear the call of Osse and wish Ulmo to stop rather than continue all the way to the land of Valinor. Ulmo consents and permanently roots the island within the bay, allowing the Teleri to live surrounded by the sea. There they would abide as they wished under the stars of heaven, yet within the sight of Aman and the deathless shore. While they had indeed come to the uttermost west, the Teleri did not enter Valinor, wishing to stay upon their island home, afterward called Tol Eressëa, the Lonely Island. Remaining detached from the Noldor and Vanyar, the Teleri would develop their own language, known as Telerin. It is said the Valar wished to see the Lonely Isle, and so made a gap within the Pelori Mountains. This gap would be called the Kalakiria. meaning light cleft. This would have a great impact upon the island, as the light from Valinor would cause its lands to have fertile growth, and the waters surrounding it would shine with the gold and silver light of the two trees. And it is said that upon this isle, the first flowers east of the Pelori would grow. There would also be a great tree that would grow on Tol Eressëa. For in the elven city of Tirion, there was Galathylion, a tree made in the image of Telperion, the silver of the two trees. A seedling of Galathylion was given to the Teleri, who would name it Celeborn, meaning tree of silver. As the years go on, the Teleri are torn between their love of the sea and their desire to see their kin and the light of Valinor. In order to allow them to travel the seas, Ulmo sends Aule to the Teleri, who teaches them the craft of shipbuilding. But rather than sail them by wind, Aule gives them many strong-winged swans, who would draw their ships over the windless sea. Thus the Teleri would be split once again, with some remaining on Tol Eressëa. The Teleri would establish the port city of Alqualonde on the shores of Aman, and would fashion great ships in the shape of swans. Thus, swans would become a great motif among the elves, from those that pulled their first ships all the way to the boats found in Lorien. The next we would hear of Tol Eressëa comes as the First Age wanes. When Earendil and Elwing make their great voyage to Valinor, requesting the aid of the Valar, they would pass Tol Eressëa on the way, and after the resulting War of Wrath, which would bring about the downfall of Morgoth, the elves who had left Valinor were forgiven by the Valar, and would come to dwell upon Tol Eressëa, and from there, some would go further to Valinor. Those that remained would live upon the isle, and within its chief city of Avallone, and it is said that the tower of this city would be the first sight a sailor would see when journeying to the Undying Lands. But Tol Eressëa would not be the only great island in the sea, for at the dawn of the Second Age, Aule would raise Númenor from the sea, a gift from the Valar to the men of the First Age. It is said that from Númenor, the men could see Tol Eressëa, and indeed these two islands would have close friendship. While the men were forbidden to sail to the Undying Lands, the elves of Eressëa would frequently visit Númenor. Even before men had discovered their new home, the elves would bring animals, flowers, herbs, and fountains from their own island to this land of gift. Perhaps greatest of all these gifts was Nimloth, a seedling of Celeborn. This white tree would be the ancestor of the white trees of Gondor, tracing a great lineage from the earliest days of the world to the latest. Unfortunately, the great friendship between elves and men would sour, for the Númenorians would grow jealous of the elves' immortality. In turn, around 2,000 years into Númenor's existence, the Valar would send the elves of Tol Eressëa as messengers to the men, attempting to reason with them, explaining that their fates were separate. But most of the men would not listen. They would hear nothing of the separate and meaningful lives of their races. Instead, the sight of Avallone in the distance would only feed their resentment of the elves. Further into darkness, Númenor would fall, and during the raid of Ar-Gimilzor, any who welcomed the elven ships were punished, and the use of the elven tongue was forbidden. From this time onward, the elven ships would never again visit from Tol Eressëa, and soon after, the city of Avallone is veiled in cloud, hidden from Númenorian sight. Instead, the men would come to the Undying Lands. Led by their last king, Pharazon, a great Númenorian fleet would make their way to Aman. From their city of Avallone, The elves would see this great fleet encompass their entire isle, and they would mourn, for the light of the setting sun was cut off by the cloud of the Númenóreans. In response to this act of war, Ilúvatar would open a great chasm in the sea, sinking the Númenórean fleet. And as the Isle of Númenor is swallowed miles away, Tol Eressëa, along with all of Aman, is set beyond the now sphere-shaped world, forever beyond the reach of mortal men. From this point onward, Tol Eressëa, along with Aman, is only reachable by the Straight Road, a mysterious path where elves leaving Middle-earth by ship could pass beyond the world itself, and yet becoming a destination or a temporary stop for elves would not be the end of the tale of this great island, for there would indeed be mortals who would come to its shores. In their own time, Bilbo, Frodo, Samwise, and Gimli would all make their way to the uttermost west, being granted special permission to take the road where no other mortals were permitted. While now living in the immortal lands, their nature as mortal beings is unchanged, and in time their lives would come to an end. And yet the days of their twilight were a reward. As Tolkien would tell us of Frodo in particular, he would enjoy a period of reflection and peace, and a gaining of a truer understanding of his position in littleness and in greatness, spent still in time amid the natural beauty of Arda unmarred, the earth unspoiled by evil. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. CCDC Red Team, Evil Chameleon, Tom DeBombadil 19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Jeremy Daniel Derby, Madame Director, Freya Firestar, Chris and Meg Q, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Kiara Berlin, Z and N, Evely, Kia, Landry Quinn Walker, Ice Glazer, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.